Okay, good morning. So, a new siman, Hilchos Birkas Hamazon, siman Kuf Pei Hey. This is going to discuss the halachas of saying Birkas Hamazon, B'Kol Ram, and other details of Birkas Hamazon. Very, very interesting siman. Says the Mechaber, Birkas Hamazon Nemra B'Chol Lashon. You can say Birkas Hamazon in any language you want. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Siv Aleph Tichsiv Uveirachta B'Chol Lashon. You can actually say Birkas Hamazon in any language you want, so long as you understand that language. So if I want to say, Birkas Hamazon in Italian, then it's not going to help me because I don't understand it. But so long as you understand it. That's mi'ikadin. If I want to say Birkas Hamazon in English because I understand English, or in French because I understand French, then I can do that. However, it's a mitzvah min hamuvcha to say it in Lashon HaKodesh. If you take a look at number 2, what about tefillah? Does tefillah need to be in Lashon HaKodesh, or can you say it in a language that you understand? Says footnote 2, in tefillah, kosav b'be halacha le'el, shemi she'eina mevin es Lashon HaKodesh, someone who doesn't understand Lashon HaKodesh, odif Hebrew, odif she'yispala b'Lashon she'mevin. It's better that he davens in a language which he understands. That's only if the person is he's a big Yirei Shemayim, he wants to daven in a language that he understands, and that's why he's allowed to daven in a different language. But if that's not his kavanah, better he davens with Lashon HaKodesh, even though he may not understand all of it. By davening in the original, in the Lashon HaKodesh, there's many benefits. Because that is the language which HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to his Nevi'im. The world was created with Lashon HaKodesh. When the Anshe Knesset were masaking the actual nusach, nimnu al kol bracha bracha b'tevusel b'tzirufei osiyosel, they included in the words and in the letterings and the permutations of the words and the gematrias and the juxtapositions of the letters, kama soidus ne'elamim v'niskovim, many very elusive and secret and high secrets. And therefore, when we daven in Lashon HaKodesh, we may not understand all the very deep kavanas. The tefillah works. So imagine you've got a lock, right? A sort of a safe home, and you put in a code, a number lock. You put in the numbers. I don't understand why these numbers work, why it's after this order, but it does the job. It opens the code. So too with Lashon HaKodesh, there are lots of hidden secrets. Why is it after this order? But at the end of the day, it opens the door. Okay, so in other words, what have we said? That Birkas Hamazon can be said b'chol lashon, so long as you understand the other language, but it's preferable to say it in Lashon HaKodesh. Okay, now let's continue the Mishnah Berurah. This is a very famous chinuch. Kosav b'sefer hachinuch. Anyone who is very particular, very careful with Birkas Hamazon, his mezonos, his parnasa, will be come to him in an honorable, respectful way all his days. It says the chinuch quotes Mishnah Berurah that a person should be medaktik to bench Birkas Hamazon from a bencher, from a sefer, v'lo bal peh, not to say it out loud. Kosav b'sefer chasidim. Ma'aseh be'echad shemes. There was a story with one person who died. V'nisgale b'chaloim le'echad mikreva. When he came back in a dream to one of his relatives, v'omaloi b'chol yoim dononosi. Every day they judge me. Al shelo hayisi medaktik levarech al brachas b'kavanas halev. Because I didn't daven brachas with proper kavanah. Now, take a look at the Be'er Hativ. There's an amazing Be'er Hativ. Let me just be mucked in the Be'er Hativ with an unbelievable story. There was a story that came out some years ago that a certain Rosh Shiva or Mashgiach or something was walking in Mea She'arim, in the back streets of Mea She'arim. And he was walking there around lunchtime. He sees in the back of a Beis Medrash an old Yerushalmi Yid davening, saying Birkas Hamazon. It was like Ben Astorim. He had some lunch which he just finished eating, and this fellow was davening Birkas Hamazon with tremendous hislavas, with tremendous kavanah, and he made an impression on him. He happened to be there a few days later, and again he's walking past at the same time, and he sees this same old Yerushalmi davening with tremendous kavod. He realizes something interesting going on over here. He goes into the base of Medrash. He sits down with this guy, and he says, "Look, I came by a few days ago. I came again today. You're davening Birkas Hamazon. I've never seen anyone daven like this before. What's the story?" The guy tells him the following story. He was a young man before the war who grew up in a little shtetl out not far from Lublin. When he was a kid in Cheder, one time they had a tremendous excitement. The Rebbe in Cheder told him the next day the great Ramesh Shapiro is coming to the Cheder. He's coming to visit our town. He was the Rosh Yeshiva, of course, in Chachmei Lublin. And he's coming to visit. Now, Ramesh Shapiro was a tremendous person, the innovator of Daf Yomi. He was a tremendous speaker, a member of the Polish Sem. He came, and there was a big yontif in town, and he told all the boys had to put on the big day Shabbos. Fine. So he said, and he's sitting at the front. Ramesh Shapiro came and asked them all a question. What question? This question of the Be'er Hativ. Take a look. Motzosi lama ein pei b'Birkas Hamazon. He said to the boys, there's one letter in the whole of Birkas Hamazon which does not appear. In all of the Aleph base, can you see Paul at the top? The Be'er says Be'er Hativ underneath the Mechaba. It says Be'er Hativ, and it's the second line. He says there's one letter missing from Birkas Hamazon, doesn't appear in the whole Birkas Hamazon. Which one is it? None of the boys knew. So he told them this Be'er Hativ. Motzasi lama ein fei. There's no final fei. Fei tzofit. The end of fei is not. It doesn't appear in Birkas Hamazon. Why? Lefi shekol misha beirach Birkas Hamazon bekavona. Anyone who benches Birkas Hamazon with kavona, ein sholet by lo'af v'lo ketzef. He will never be exposed to anger and wrath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And his mezonos will be found to him berevach u'bekavod kol yomov, etc., etc. This fellow tells the mashgiach. He says to him, I heard this. I undertook for the rest of my days to say Birkas Hamazon bekavona. Fast forward a few years, the guy found himself on a train to Auschwitz. He realizes this is terrible. He gets on a selection, and he says, you know what? A few years ago, Ramesh Shapiro came and told us this. I undertook to daven Birkas Hamazon bekavona. I want to cash in. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's time to cash in. By that time, he's got to the front of the line. He was told to the right. He goes and finds himself in another line. This is, do you have a profession? You have a profession. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I've said Birkas Hamazon for many years now, since I was a little boy, bekavona, I want to cash in again on this. Save me from af and from chaim on ketzef. So someone whispered to him, he says, tell the guy that you're a chef. Tell him you can cook, which of course was the safest place, relatively, in the camps. And Taka, that's what happened. And he got to the front line, he's a chef, he was sent to the kitchens, and he was able to cook. And he says, that's why I've always benched Birkas Hamazon, because of Meir Shapiro. That's what he said. A very remarkable story. It's based on this Be'er Hativ. Anyone who benches Birkas Hamazon is saved from ketzef and from af. His kol yomov and mezonosav mitzvim le kol yomov. Okay, let's carry on. Base. An important halacha: when a person benches, he's got to actually say the words, but he's got to articulate it. You can't think benching. You've got to say it. That if it wasn't so loud that your ears could hear it, then so long as your lips are moving. If you're just thinking benching, even b'diavad it hasn't worked. Says the Mishnah Berurah bisfosov. If you just think benching, then you're not yotze. If it's because of some illness or whatever reason, you just literally thought it, then yotze. But the evet, if you're ill, you're sick, there's an onus, then that's the best you can do, yotze. Because it's not legamre. What does that mean? Because if you think it, it's not dibur. You haven't benched. If that's the best you can do, a person is very ill or whatever, then yahar beliba. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yigbal ischar avozeh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give him schar because that's the best you can do. Aval be'etzem einu yotze. Be'etzem you have not been yotze. Valkein. When the onus passes and you recover, if you're still full from that meal, you should bench properly. If you take a look quickly at number 5, he says, So what's the get there? Really, you should bench out loud. Yeah, you should certainly try and hear what you're saying, but even if your lips move, and you're articulating the words, says Rosh Hashanah, and that's okay. What you can't do is literally just think it. Just sit there and think it. There needs to be something. Okay. Gimel. Yesh mi she'omed de balabayis in bono ve'ishtei tzorich levarech b'kol ram kadei sheyetze b'krir kosei. That if you're sitting with the family, then you should do it b'kol ram so you can be motzi everybody. Says the Mishnah Berurah, hainu kashe'enim b'kiyim ba'atzmam. That's because they don't know how to bench. Levarech v'hem yetzim b'shmiyasim mimenu. And you're being motzi them. V'yesh shekosvu d'tov le'olam levarech b'kol ram. And even if you haven't got people around you and you're not being motzi anyone, it's always good to bench b'kol ram. Why? Ki kol ma'ira kavona. Because benching with a kol, with a voice, is going to arouse kavona of a pratzim mushabas or a shchedesh leishkach alidei zeh lahaskim eina ma'ira. Yes, we're very familiar. If we bench out loud, then the likelihood of forgetting Ritzei and Ya'aleh V'Yavo is much less. If you look at number 7, he goes, V'hu adin in shabrachas. This idea of benching or speaking out loud to help kavona is true for other brachas. Kosev lekamon. It's good to train yourself to do it b'kol ram because that is going to help your kavana. Dalet. Afilu nishtaker kolkach ad she'enu yochel ledaber karoi. Even a person is so drunk that he can't speak properly, he slurs or whatever it is, he can't think straight. Yochel levarich birchas hamazon. He's still allowed to bench, as in the Mishnah Berurah, yochel levarich birchas hamazon dichsiv v'achalta v'zovato v'irachta. Even if he's all confused, I think that means he can't speak properly. Or misavata kodagli. The diuk is from savata. Why? Shemotzu the kamapalmim shach svea. After a person is satiated, adam omid shikar. He's eaten and he's also had some drink, and therefore that's for savata. Vafilu hachi chivato tater levarich. The Torah obligates him to bench. Okay, let's finish the simon. In Beirach, if a person benches, and there's soya opposite him, he was drunk, pirish legamri, which means in this case totally drunk, not like in the last one where he was just a bit sort of more just a bit tipsy. The Taisus and the Rosh are masupuk whether you have to go back and bench again if you are shikar legamre or if you had soya in front of you. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, hey, in Beirach v'hoyser, rotzalema, the betfila kaiman on the el, besimen ayin vov, b'misha shespalel u'motz soya kenegdoi. We said previously that if someone davens and found soya, excrement in front of them, I would sit on the side, so within daladamas, but Markham Royal Istapik, in a place where it was he wasn't sure if there'd be tzaya there, or Pasha Bodak, and he was negligent and he did not check beforehand. We said there that if he found afterwards, he's got to go back and daven again. It's like an abominable offering, and therefore you've got to daven again. So too with Krishma. Is it the same rule with Birkas Hamazon that if you find Tzoya afterwards, you've got to bench again? Ideal Meshani Birkas Hamazon to Kula Mehalson. Maybe Birkas Hamazon is a bit more lenient than the Kriya Shema. Tahari B'Shasui, Afshi Yochel L'Daber V'Nei HaMelech, Chaimelon. Because if a person is drunk a little bit, we say Al Yispalel, you're not allowed to daven, or say Kriya Shema, or then Birkas Hamazon V'Adam Mut B'Shasui. But with Birkas Hamazon, you are allowed to. So maybe Birkas Hamazon is more lenient. That's the Sophic. Or we said you're shikar, perish legamre, that means you're totally drunk. You cannot even speak, forget slurring, you can't even speak before the melech. And therefore it's mesupik whether you need to bench again when the wine has sort of dissipated and you're no longer drunk. And you're still fully within, like we said yesterday, you're within the 72 minutes or whatever of the meal. You're not so drunk, you're like the shichrus of late, that you just don't know what's going on at all. Because that's he's considered a shaita or part of mikol mitzvahs, and he is part of everything. For sure, he would have to go back and bench. And in the previous sif, shemati levarich ma'iri sheyochel ledaber lifnei hamelech, he can speak in front of a king. V'hikshu kamachreinim to kiven she'en yochel ledaber karoyu. Since he can't speak properly, that means he can't speak in front of a king. And nonetheless, the Yerushalmi is matrid. How do you deal with that question? And the halacha, the Achronim concludes and say, if a person is so drunk, he should still bench. Just the best thing to do is just to bench before you get to that stage of intoxication. Okay. So the Shai there Masupik im Tzorich Lachsav Levarich says in the Mishnah Berurah. Aval lechatchila gam he moedim da'asa levarich shum bracha v'chein divrei Torah neged tzoya. In a situation where you went and did it, then there's a sophic whether you got to do it again. But everyone agrees that you shouldn't do it lechatchila in front of tzoya or anything else. Torah talks because it says v'hoy machanecha kodesh v'atu tefillah ksiv b'kra. It says anything, any davar shebekdusha, also likris b'makom she'en noki, you can't do b'makom noki. But lo mistap gele k'shekva beirach u'matzachach. The whole sophic of Tosfos and the Rosh is if you went and did it and you benched, do you have to repeat it? But lechatchila you should not be benching if there's soya around. Or ladina das ahoilas tomid v'lirabba b'shem abach. The that you should go back if you haven't yet digested the food within 72 minutes, that you should go back and do it again. That he mentions this suffix that you have to go back and do it. However, if it's just meraglaim, it's just urine, then you do not need to go back and bench. Same story, you benched, and then within daladamas you found there was some meraglaim there, then it's a sophic for meraglaim, you do not need to go back and bench again. Because even lechatchila, if there was meraglaim there, so long as it doesn't smell, then you're allowed to bench. The neged meraglaim hu rak yisur drabanan, va'al sveiken legozun, it's a sophic, we're not koishesh. Because if a person knew there was meraglaim and nonetheless went ahead and benched, lo havam machabashiti, wouldn't say pshita, who in motzah tzor kenegdei, because it's the same halach of tzoya. Now, just two quick horrors. Where is this relevant? It's relevant with a child, with a baby who's got a diaper, who's got a nappy. What do you do then? Yeah, exactly. With tinuk, if you look at number 11, a couple of hours. With tinuk shadain en yochel lechol kazayis dogon. If you've got a child who's a newborn, right? Baruch Hashem, we've got a newborn at home that is not yet eating properly kazayis dogon and kadei achilas pras. And you're allowed to say divrei Torah, so that's not a concern. It's obviously only when the child is a little bit older. Now, also an interesting, he says over here, what about vomit? What about sick? He says in a few paragraphs down, even if it's disgusting, which of course it is, ein dinner ketzoya, it hasn't got the same halachic status as tzoya. That's only if it doesn't smell bad. If avalim reichara, but if vomit or sit, whatever, it smells bad, kosav le'el shekol reach ra habom medover shelish le'ika, any bad smell which comes from a source, dinner ketzoya v'tzorich lahachik mena b'kamol einov, you've got to move away, not just daladamas, kamol einov, you can't even be in sight of it. And one final point, what about, this is also a famous shaila, what about a catheter? So if you look at number 13, he says, they've attached a catheter to this person, a catheter, he says. So the famous shuvah Ramesha is, the stipler, is you're allowed to. The shaila is you need to cover the plastic bag or whatever it is. It depends what the material is. Generally speaking, you should cover it. There should be behind the towel or something. But it's not. But it's generally speaking, you're allowed to daven if there's a catheter there. Okay, Peseda.